Preparing to launch.
little,
Setting up. It says a sensible
Sure.
object with ID does not exist, cannot be. Okay. Share your page.
Okay, you're live again.
There we
It's
go.
live?
Wonderful. Hey,
Yep.
and we're
Okay.
back.
We might
And we're
be,
back.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're back, but
You're good.
we might be
Okay.
in hell. It doesn't, it should usually just do it. And
Mhm.
I have no idea where it doesn't. And if it goes down again, we'll try to start it again. Okay?
Good
All
evening
right.
to everybody just
And-
tuning in. Appreciate the technical difficulties we're working through tonight, but I'm glad that you're here with us. Just bear with us. We're going to get things restarted and back to the show.
Okay, well, we're back in and I've made the introductions. We got that far the last time. Do you want me to reintroduce again?
I don't think we got that far last time.
I
Okay.
think we might just start
You're
from the
20
top.
seconds in.
All right, I'm going to try it again. Okay, so I'm Louise. I'm the host and the president of the SD-SGNDP Riding Association and part of the Jeremy Rose election team. Jeremy is our NDP candidate for SDSG. He's dedicated to advocating for working class families, social justice, and a fairer economy. With a passion for community service and progressive change, he brings a strong voice for local issues to the provincial stage. Kathy Poirier is a former CCVS student and UCDSB teacher, currently on secondment from her teaching role to serve as district officer for OSSTF District 26, advocating for education workers, unionism, diversity, and social justice. Before I continue, I'm just going to do something because I have a thought. Okay, fine. I just want to close something else in case it's eating up bandwidth somehow. All right. And then we also have Matteo Lucio, who is a 20-year-old student in his third year studying political science at the University of Ottawa. Matteo is interested in politics, movies, and music. And we have Phyllis Saru, who is a new member to our Riding Association board. Phyllis is a trained mental health and addictions worker. Phyllis will be monitoring the chat. So if you have a question, put it in the chat and Phyllis will read it for us. Okay? So let's start again. Welcome. So I'm going to ask again, how is the campaign going so far? And what are people telling you at the doors?
It's been great to get out and campaign. It has been hectic, so yes, appreciate it. Everything seems to go like this, but the opportunity to get to go to the door and speak with people has been great. Lots of positive energy. A lot of people really just looking to see how they're going to be able to get through into this next election. Some conversations about Trump and tariffs and how we're going to move forward. The good news is when we ask these questions tonight, just like I say at the door, there is a plan on how we're going to be able to protect Ontario. Lots of people are worried about the cost of living, but the great news there is that we also have a plan to help the people there. And hopefully some people ask some questions tonight and they'll be able to bring that message out to you.
Okay. So this is a question for everybody. And this is where it cut last time to me. Anyways, what has been the biggest challenge in the first 3 weeks of this campaign? Jeremy, and anybody else, like your opinions of it overall?
I think the biggest challenge has been the pace, especially, this seems a little bit rushed in terms of being able to raise awareness for an election and to make sure that people know where to vote, how to vote, when to vote. I think we were in a federal election cycle, so it come to a shock to a lot of people that we are now in a provincial election because we weren't supposed to be. So getting up to speed with how things are going and with only a precious amount of time left for people to be able to cast their ballot, I think that's been the biggest challenge, is trying to make sure we can keep pace with this whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I think speaking from the perspective of someone who hasn't been campaigning, who has been, I guess, the demographic that the parties are trying to interact with, I can say the same from that perspective is that it's been difficult getting information about candidates. I've decided I'm gonna vote in SDSG, but I could also vote. I could have also voted in Ottawa Venya if I wanted to. And in both of these ridings, there's a lot of candidates from a lot of different parties who have struggled getting information out because of this snap election that's been called.
Yeah,
I think
well,
from
oh, yes, Kathy?
I think from sort of an education perspective, and not just education, the impetus and trying to impress on people in our community and other communities that the last election, 57% of people didn't vote. They chose to sit on their couches, and there was a specific outcome as a result. And trying to get people to shift their mindset from, well, all of this is just inevitable, to 57% of people sitting at home changes the inevitable. It changes the course of an entire election if bums get out of seats and show up to polls and put a little ballot in a box. That nothing is a done deal until the election's over if you get off the couch and go and vote.
Yeah. It's ultra important, let's face it. It's one of the bare minimum things that you should be doing as a citizen. And if you don't do it and you don't get what you want, you really lose the right to complain, as far as I'm concerned.
It's a big thing for me to try to make sure that we're empowering people to use their vote. When we speak to how few people voted, I'm sure that it's part of my job, my responsibility, to be able to bring a reason for you to get in and vote. Remember, voting is easy, whether or notwithstanding. You can get in and get out super fast. You can vote right now. And I'm really hopeful for tomorrow. The debate is going to be able to come out that we're going to finally get the chance for you to hear about local issues, things that are going to impact you directly. When we get that chance to debate, maybe it's just then you'll feel the confidence to tell your friends, tell your neighbors, make a party of it, and get out and vote.
I believe we have a question, Phyllis.
No, there's no question in the chat, but I'm putting up my hand to acknowledge
Oh.
what Jeremy is saying about voting and how easy it is to go and vote. I was just going to explain my experience. I was at the Cornwall Square last Saturday doing errands, and I happened to just walk by where the voting station is. And hey, there was nobody there. I thought, well, why not? So I went in with my driver's license, and it was total of a 2-minute effort to vote.
Yeah.
So easy, so simple, right there at the Cornwall Square. They're open 7 days a week. Can't say enough about how easy it was. I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's important to know. I mean, it's not like it's a really big deal.
No.
Mhm.
You know, as long as it's not, you know, full on, you know, snowstorm, but otherwise it's
And to speak to people of my age demographic who may be scared about voting, thinking it's this big process, I voted for my first time in the municipal election here in Cornwall 2 years ago in fall of 2022. And the workers at these stations go above and beyond to help you out when it's your first time to vote. So if you are feeling scared for whatever reason, do not feel scared. There are workers there in place to help you.
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, why wait till election day when you're going to have to stand in line, maybe wait for a long time, take
No.
time off work? Right.
You still won't wait. You still it doesn't take that long.
Okay, good.
Even on election day, I've voted several times on election day, and
Okay.
it's, you know, half an hour, an hour. It's not a big deal.
Our district of teachers, we're holding 3 poll parties this week, and poll as in election polls, where
Right.
we're getting staff out together to socialize, talk politics, to endorse different candidates who we see, like Jeremy, are sort of the future of politics in Ontario. And as a crew, we're supporting the whole me plus 3 and going as a crew to early advanced poll stations and putting our ballot in a box as a group, just to sort
Yeah.
of, and again, for some people, like, well, you know, you're not going to know who I'm voting with. Doesn't matter. You're coming to vote with us. Exercising that right is
Yeah.
the most important piece of all this, being able to have like civil discourse about how to make this province better, and then walking to the polling box at the Cornwall Civic Complex as a crew to sort of say, hey, look, painful, painless, and we're doing it together.
Yeah, I agree. It's, you know, Like I said, if you don't vote, you have no right to complain. And when you're voting for your government, and your government is what's going to directly affect your life for the next 4 years plus, right? Unless, of course, they call another election. Let's hope not. So, Kathy, I wanted to know, sort of, what do you think's at stake for SD&G voters from your perspective?
There are so many issues sort of in the province, but in our riding. If you look at the city of Cornwall and we look at people who are unhoused, homelessness, um, the economy, young people like Mateo and my son, who's going to be coming back from university for the summer, and and the kids in the house looking at, are we ever going to be able to afford a house? Are there going to be good jobs in our community? What does healthcare look like? My partner has moved back to Ontario, grew up, born and raised in Cornwall, lived in Gatineau for the longest time, came back to Ontario, and watching my partner and his children as waiting for a family doctor, and knowing that we are not an exception to that rule in the number of households in South Stormont, South Glengarry, and Dundas County where people are waiting for medical professionals. Young people being concerned about, where am I going to get my post-secondary education when the colleges
Yeah.
and universities are cutting back massively based on the lack of funding that's gone into post-secondary education in the province and in our area in the last 7 years, maybe longer. What does that mean for our young people moving forward? What does in Eastern Ontario, what's the future of in our area, um, seniors care? What is the future of healthcare? Like, there's some really big issues, Jeremy, that
Yeah.
I don't envy that you get to tackle, but I'm confident that you are the right person at the right time to be answering some of these questions and starting the march towards answers.
I hear
Jeremy,
it, Kathy. When you
oh,
talk about a whole bunch of things at once, because they're all so important, it can feel like an impossible mountain that's probably driving the apathy of why we think what we can do. But for the purpose of the exercise is to think positive and talk about solutions. So when we take these problems, there are ways to make things better. So when we talk about homelessness to begin, when we talk about how it's not just a Cornwall issue, across the SDSG, with the stats to back it up, homelessness is a percentage of the population. So rural homelessness is also very much on the rise. What you see is people need in these situations to go to where the municipal centers are, just to be able to get into a tent encampment, because that's where their path in life is right now.
yeah.
We can help with this when we make a plan to succeed. So while the current government doesn't really see the need to disperse the funding to address the problem, an NDP government will. So there are plans in place to upload and support the municipalities that have been working with nonprofits and other agencies to support people who are homeless. When we talk about the Homes Ontario plan, which speaks to cost of living, which is for everybody, whether you are on the edge or if you've fallen off, you're trying to get back on track, it's about making homes affordable, the plan to build new houses and make sure, especially when this is the affordable homes and cooperatives that are going to support people who we need to get off the streets and into housing, that they're supported with mental health and other medical needs that they'll need, and guidance so that they can get back to being able to survive.
I'm just,
Yeah,
I'm gonna,
by all means.
I'm gonna
I
jump
don't mean to
in.
take the whole show.
No,
Yeah.
it's because you're gonna talk about everything all at once. Jeez.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're talking about the cost of living, and housing, um, for the guests, and Phyllis, jump in if you feel like it. What are the challenges for the next MPP in this area? And how is, yeah,
Sorry. And of course, obviously, Phyllis, by all means, I would love to give you an opportunity to speak.
Mateo, as a young person, what challenges do you see for yourself, sort of being from this community and your future in it, perhaps?
I think it's as you said, Kathy. It's like people of my age group have an increasingly scary thought sentiment that we may never be able to own homes. It's this way in Toronto, it's this way in Ottawa, it's this way in a lot of big cities, but it is this way in smaller communities like SDSG and well as well.
Mm.
So, so yeah, I mean, we just obviously this conservative government has been in power since what 2018, 2017 now, and
2018.
yeah, I would like to ask young people my age or older, especially older, if we go to especially people in the age group like 25 to 30, you can ask them, were rents lower, are rents lower now than they were in 2018? Is it easier to buy a house now than it was in 2018 when Ford's government took charge? I think any reasonable person would say no.
Oh, it's so, you know, I know I've seen the local rents here. Some of them are doubling
Crazy.
from
I mean,
2019
I mean,
onwards.
my older brother, he's 30. I envy him. He was my age about 10 years ago. If I could have gone to university and rented a one-bedroom apartment for $700 10 years ago, that seems like a blessing compared to what we have now.
Yeah. Does that affect your ability to function in school and stuff like that?
It is when that's something I really have to focus on, being able to pay rent for the year, for the month. It does affect to some extent,
Yeah.
focusing on education.
Well, it splits your focus, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so, speaking of cost of living, Jeremy, like, how would you help families in the community? Cost of living and housing.
But when I hear Mateo talk about basically whether or not he's ever going to get the chance to own his own home,
Yeah.
I feel you. And one of the things is we don't always all get to own a house, but we at least should be able to get an affordable place to rent. And one of the biggest challenges I think we've seen in the last 7 years, part of what the conservative government has done that's not helping, is make rent controls more like weaker, make them more complicated, allow for loopholes and exploitations that create the situations that get people kicked
Yeah.
out on the street. And that's just not acceptable. The plan here is for the NDP as a government to reinstate and properly put in place rent controls to protect a person like you to be able to get a good place to live and not make it such a huge part of your income so that you can do things like focusing on getting a better job or moving to a place where you can get an opportunity to find your career so that you're not trapped in a cycle where you aren't able to move or you aren't able to train. These things, these affordability things are very real and a big part of the priority for the NDP government when they come into power. Cost of living, I mean, even just when you start talking about groceries, we are getting gouged pretty horribly on just some basic things like food. And again, the NDP will deliver with a plan for this. The NDP will bring in a grocery rebate to help the people who need it most, not just a $200 check to everybody. It doesn't go to billionaires. It goes to the families that need it in order to make sure that groceries can get on the table. And then from there, appointing watchdogs to make sure that the prices that are put on display are accountable. If the price goes up,
Yeah.
you have to display it the same way that you put a sale on. And that way you'll introduce fairness into the pricing system of Ontario's stores.
I hope they do that because, obviously we were
Give us a
having,
chance, I promise.
yes.
It's on the table.
Well, right now, I think Matteo and I were talking about this before that in another conversation, having these electronic stickers on things where they can just change the price like that. And if they have a
Yeah.
lot of people going for that item, they can just raise the price
Mhm.
You
immediately.
rarely see a green initiative going wrong, but there you have it.
That's awful. You know, um,
Just want to say that with the grocery initiative too, like I
yeah,
think that is a big conversation, the $200 rebate across the table for a lot of us who are socially conscious, who worry about our neighbors and people in our communities who are less fortunate. That felt dirty from the provincial government. it felt like we're going to buy you. And for those of us who that $200 just felt wrong, it was a why are you not taking these checks for those of us who are comfortable and do not necessarily have a huge advantage for having it and put it towards
Right.
helping the homeless, helping our food insecure people, supporting food banks, finding ways to support community members who with mental health initiatives that targeted again rebates for groceries for those who are most vulnerable for food scarcity is the right way forward. Blanket cash to anyone and everyone, regardless of what their income is a little frightening. In that, for those of us who can and want to take care of other members of our community, let it go to where it needs to go so that everyone can have a better baseline cost of living. And I appreciate the sort of grocery rebate idea that it's looking to take care of Ontarians in a milieu where people are really, really struggling right now.
But I also like that they will hold them accountable insofar
Yes.
as they will force them to start showing price changes, price increases. I don't know if people, I mean, I know because I obviously shop for myself. I know what it's like. I know the things that I like, and I see how the prices have jumped. And sometimes from one week to the next, a product that was like $4 is now $5. That to me should be, we should see that because that's, people are talking about this and thinking, oh, well, this is inflation. It's, there was inflation and there still is a little bit in Canada, but not that much. Most of this is price gouging.
Especially
Right.
when you see it week to week, right? $4 to $5, that's 20% right there. It's essential if you're
Yeah.
buying two or threes of, like it's a box of crackers for Jasper who eats them by the box. It really starts to add up, and where your sticker shock at the counter starts to come in. And yes, you are always trying to chasing in the back of your mind, like, wasn't that $3.49 just like last week? And it just almost, you almost perceive a certain amount of collusion because we have such
Yeah.
a few amounts of choice. We have billionaires that make the news in the United States every day. We got millionaires in Canada doing the same evil deeds. And that's where the watchdog coming in and the honesty and the integrity being restored and what we simply assumed, like missing some of like the days of Sears and Zellers and things being much different. They've come and gone. We've allowed corporations to get so large that they're in so many parts of our lives that without somebody holding them accountable, I guess they simply cannot help themselves.
No, well, they're born to be greedy,
Yeah.
and they are, right?
I think the PCs have done a good job at making it seem like the federal government has let inflation balloon to some uncontrollable point, but it is more, if you actually look at it, it's more greed than inflation.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because inflation, what happens is you see things slowly climb, right? It's climbing by pennies. It's not climbing, 20% from one week to the next. Like I don't buy it. And at the same time, when you see companies like grocers and stuff like this who are making, extraordinary profits, record profits per year, and we're paying so much more. Give me a break.
And
You
to
know,
everybody who's watching in the live stream, I'm hoping that this is a really great conversation for you. I'm really hoping to inspire a conversation that's going to give you the confidence to vote. Don't be shy. By all means, please do everything you can to reach out to us and bring your questions. We welcome them all. I'd love for the opportunity to hear from you.
what do you think about this? I know that you work, Phyllis, with you've done a lot of work with the homeless in this community. How do you think that this affects them and our ability to care for them?
What affects them? This upcoming election?
No, the upcoming election, yes, maybe, and the extraordinary cost of living.
Well, the extraordinary cost of living is absolutely keeping these people homeless. I mean, there's a lot of homeless out there that actually work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 type jobs. They're working 40 hours a week and they still cannot afford rent. I mean, do the math. If you work for 18, 20 bucks an hour times 40 hours a week, if your rent is 1,500 a month, it doesn't work out. I mean, it's simple, simple math. You can't work just to pay rent and then you have nothing left for food or bus pass. So these people will continue being homeless. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, there's not a hope in hell for them, regardless
Well,
of.
there's a hope.
Well,
Phyllis.
you know, okay, let me reword that. There's
Yeah.
always hope, but it just depends what government gets in. I'll be really honest. It depends who gets in. Because,
yeah, and I
you know,
hear you because this feeling, this has been going on for years now, and I'm sure as you've lived it, you have a very deep, strong feeling about the connection, and we're trying to look for ways that we're going to make it better, and that's a big part of what inspired me is the cynicism and the way, like even just the way this election was called, was so strong that it inspired me to run. That is why I'm here, is when I hear that we have solutions for these problems, but the government we have is not interested in implementing them, I have an issue with that. When they think that they can just shoot me a $200 check, not even printed on bank paper, and still haven't even gotten mine yet to find out whether it's going to bounce or not, and you're going to call a snap election at the speed at which I'm quickly learning is incredibly hard to try to keep up with democracy, I have an issue with that. But take hope. There is a movement for the NDP. Remember, we are going from opposition to leadership. All we need is the support of people, and we can make things better. And the housing initiatives, I have to hope. My job is to bring them to Eastern Ontario. And I have that hope when I see people living in that kind of condition, working hard every day, needing that opportunity, that we will build the houses that make that happen for them.
Phyllis, how are you? How is it? Can you see the chat?
yes, I've been watching it nonstop. There's nobody in the chat. No.
We got a bunch of looky-loos tonight. That's okay.
No, but I'm hearing from Julia that somebody's asking, so I'm not sure if you're in the right chat.
Oh,
I,
well,
I see a few comments in chat.
Oh,
Yeah?
well then please, I'm so glad you're here. This is more when we are just flying by the seat of our pants. I never
oh,
use Facebook in my
there's a
day
different,
to day.
yeah, no, okay. There's a different Facebook chat. I didn't know I had to flip chats. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's
Okay.
excellent. I'm so glad you're here. Let's knock off some of these questions for these folks.
Okay, let me read the first question. So the first
Thank you, Bill.
question we have is from Johanna that says, so if you agree with me, the checks would have an opposite effect and the prices would continue to increase, correct?
So we're speaking, I suppose, now to the grocery rebate that we clarify, so that if there's a direct benefit given to people, that the grocery stores would simply continue to gouge. And the agreement here is that without both sides of this equation, yes, the gouging would continue. The purpose of the rebate is immediate relief, acting urgently on an urgent matter. You don't use the word crisis lightly, though we seem to have a lot of crises these days. The purpose of the rebate is for immediate relief to people. Long-term, mid-term, getting things fixed is the watchdog initiative. It's holding the stores accountable because right now they simply need to be reined in. Their pricing practices are fabricating a crisis, and it is not fair to consumers. So the NDP perspective is not just to throw money at the problem, but to put policy in place to make things better.
Okay.
Okay. There's another, not question, but there's a comment here by Miss May who says, this is a great conversation and thank you. So that's kind of nice to hear.
Thanks, Miss
I'm glad
Ray.
you're here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming by.
Now I have a last question here in the chat on Facebook from a lady named Mandy, and she says, it's quite a long question, so you'll need to pay attention here, Jeremy.
Okie doke.
Okay. ODSP recipients do not have enough money to properly house and feed themselves. $1,282 a month is not enough, period. COHB doesn't cover proper market rates either. Okay, and the comment just disappeared as I'm reading. Wow, okay. I'm sorry.
I can finish
That's
it. I
okay.
see it up here.
You see
Okay,
it on
Mateo, go for
It
it.
says it goes on to say clean, fresh food accessibility, proper supplementary healthcare for trauma such as psychologists, body therapies, and acupuncture. What to do about ODSP?
So,
Mandy, these are important things to discuss, and I appreciate you bringing them forward for us. One of the immediate things that's been brought to my attention is for people bring this story to me is to understand just how bad a situation ODSP funding is in. And I know immediately, just like we talk about immediate benefits for people for the grocery store, people who are on ODSP immediately need support. So the plan for the NDP is to immediately double that benefit. That is part of the platform, and that is part of the plan to make things better. Obviously, we are very much invested in healthcare with the needs for psychologists, for the needs for basic medicine. Being able to see a doctor is something that people have identified from all walks of life in Ontario that is lacking. The ability to be able to access public healthcare is a incredibly important part of the NDP platform. This is something that neither the Conservative government or the Liberals who want to be in power see as a priority. I believe privatized healthcare creates a barrier for people, say, on the ODSP, because they're not going to have necessarily access to insurance benefits or be able to walk in with a credit card and get the help that they need. It really reinforces an Ontario value of needing to have public health care. And when we say about getting the 15,000 new nurses over the next 3 years and the 3,500 doctors that are going to be in with the public healthcare spaces, these are hopefully going to immediately be able to bring you the help you need. And the ODSP doubling benefit will be able to get you into a more comfortable living space and be able to afford your groceries.
Phyllis?
yes, we have another question here in the chat by Amy. And Amy is asking, she says she's curious, Jeremy, what will NDP do for the autistic adults?
And I hear you, Amy, because when someone has a disability and they're looking to get support, a lot of programs end at 18. Honestly, my wife would know this better because she spent a long time working with Beyond 21. And right now we do use a nonprofit system, I believe, to support people with autism to be able to get skill sets, get employment, and be able to have a productive, happy life. So there is a need there, and there is a way for the province to support that. And so when we work with community leaders that are already doing the work, I think that we are going a long way to helping people get what they need.
Jeremy, piggybacking off that, I think from an educational perspective, parents of students with complex needs, autism, and other difficulties in education are struggling right now because the public system has defunded many of the programs that used to support students with alternative learning abilities. And parents weren't consulted at the elementary level, the secondary level, about those supports being removed, about students being fully integrated without the proper supports in their schools. So you can sort of see the continuum from childhood to adult living
Yeah.
with disabilities and the lack of supports.
Yeah.
How can you think that, how do you think that the NDP can address that continuum of lack of support? Like, has the NDP thought about also addressing sort of those supports that are missing in education as well?
Yes, because when we start to change the conversation and we go back into another critical issue, a failure of the Conservative government is to support in the K-12 process. They're not doing enough to support children with disabilities. So it does further once they're an adult, as Amy was speaking, but you're right in the K-12 that there were even cutbacks at a time when we needed more disability support than ever. So we see that it was about a $1,500 per student cut, even in the most recent view. And for people who don't necessarily have a chance because it's Toronto politics, we don't often see the Toronto side. We usually talk federal. It's Merritt Stiles that we're talking about in this conversation. So hopefully you got the chance to see the leadership debate last night. And Merritt's background is being a trustee. She does strongly believe in education. The NDP one of the cornerstones of this election and in our platform is to restore and reverse the cuts against children with disabilities. You can't just fix the schools, you can't just hire the teachers. You need to give them the support and the funding they need to help these people achieve success.
And you know, I think as that goes back to the conversation about adults with autism or different learning abilities, is that you know, it goes into adulthood what happens in education, right? If cutbacks happen in education and people with autism or different learning abilities are not able to get the support they need from a young age, that will seep into adulthood too. So I do think that is a structural thing you need to address before you can address anything else.
Okay. Do you see questions, Phyllis?
Yes, I
Okay.
see a question here from Jonah. It's quite a lengthy post, and then the question is at the end. He says,
Okay.
die hard conservative here. When Ford announced the election, it was all about being against the president. That was his whole platform. Once there was a pause, his platform went down the tubes. To waste 200 million with almost 2 years remaining in his majority mandate made me sick. I'd expect that from a liberal. Doug is a liberal in a blue shirt. Would you and your party prop up the Ontario Liberals in a provincial government just like your federal counterparts if it came to that, depending how the election goes? So let me reread that last question now, Jeremy. Would you and your party prop up the Ontario Liberals in a provincial government just like your federal counterparts if it came to that, depending how the election goes?
Well, it's an interesting question, Jonah, because one of the weird things about Ontario politics versus the federal politic climate is that the Liberals are propping us. They come to our table. The Ontario NDP are the opposition in this race. You know, that's why we say it's time for us to lead, is our message has been resonating with people. And absolutely, Doug Ford pretending that he's got some sort of handle on Donald Trump and going to Washington and not taking care of his responsibilities here should have consequences. That is not something that, you know, that was something that inspired me to run. That's just frustrating because this is not how I view our democratic process. So do I personally want to work with the Liberals? And in this case, you're talking about prop them up. Well, no, because I feel like we have very different ideologies right now being put on display between Bonnie Crombie and Merit Stiles. But when it comes to getting it done, if it is truly in the benefit of the SDSG and it is truly in the benefit of the Ontario people, I will work to get a job done. When you go to Queen's Park, it is not about being an adversary. It is about real results that benefit people. Now, I feel my party should have the chance to lead because I believe the policies I put out here tonight will work to make it better. And that is, of course, my main focus and why I haven't really given any thought as to who I'm going to play nice with.
I do think that is an interesting thing in Canadian politics that we are so afraid to reach across the table when it comes to it, that it still is very foreign in Canadian politics in general, whether it's provincial or federal, for people to collaborate across party lines. And again,
Yeah.
that Jeremy, like that you have a vision for the future of we want to lead this province. And I think that's the focus you have to walk into an election with this is what who we are and what we hope for and how we want to lead. And at the end of the day, whatever happens after that point will happen. But going into this election with hope, with determination, and again, with a clear message of who you are, represent, I think is wildly important.
And in the end, it's the results that matter. It's one of those interesting things. I say that it's new in politics to say that we don't work together, and maybe more of an American style of politics that we are not that we're so adversarial in the way that we fight with each other. I can remember just hearing stories from people who had previously run for the NDP and other elections where everyone who ran in that election, far right, far left, doesn't matter, sat down and had breakfast together. They met, they talked politics, they showed respect. And I really would like that, if nothing else, because I love breakfast and I'm a very food motivated individual. But it does sound great when you can disagree, argue, right up to the point where you realize that you're going to shake hands and just see some common ground.
I like that.
Yeah, me too. I think that a lot of people have looked at American style politics and gotten the impression that adversarial politics is the way to go. And to some extent, it is a way of standing out, but ultimately it doesn't serve the people who voted for you.
Well, it comes to getting the job done. I got to imagine it's an impediment. That not willing to support or read or modify or work with other people who are on Queen's Park. In the end of the day, you're just not seeing it. You're just not getting the work done, which is going to be an important part of success. Is I'm not intending to put my head down in the sand at all. I'm going to be going out and having conversations, because Eastern Ontario needs to be heard from. Eastern Ontario needs Toronto to see it. Sometimes it feels like we're a little bit neglected out here, and a big part of that's going to be because you got to get out there and you got to shake hands and you got to tell people where you stand and how you feel, and you've got to bring everybody to the table to understand our needs.
Well, don't forget, SDSG is a small area, but there's, other than Toronto, which is huge, and Ottawa, which is, nation's capital, it's full of small towns like Cornwall or smaller. And we have we're still the biggest part of the voter base, not just Toronto. And they forget that.
We're worth the time. And we don't have the population, but we've got the land. And it's beautiful.
A friend of mine, Jeremy, commented when she heard that this conversation was going to happen, and she said that what was so heartening for her as someone from this community was when there'd been so much mudslinging, to sort of have you step forward and the NDP step forward and start talking policy, start talking substance, stop being adversarial in a very negative way and start being, hey, here's hope, here's positive ways forward, here is what we want to do. And she just wanted to let you know that she was so pleased that there is a voice of reason, of someone who wants to sit down and have breakfast with the other side of the table and talk politics, but that to sort of someone who's willing to stop the mudslinging and have discussions, which
only because I believe in it.
Too.
Well, that's awesome.
I appreciate that.
It really does help my soul to know that there's somebody that agrees with me on that, because that's really how I see how this job would be.
Yeah, could be. Yeah.
Will be.
Okay, you're right. Good. Let's back up a little bit.
Okay, I've got 2 comments in the chat. I've had my hand up for a while. I think.
Okay, go.
Yeah.
So that's a bad habit of mine. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. I need to get this out, Jeremy, because you're going to like to hear this. Jonah has replied to you saying, perfect, with an exclamation mark. Thank you so much for the clarification, Jeremy. I'm thinking hard here. And then we have another comment from Jacqueline saying, working together, it is time, and it is very important. And then the last comment I have from Amy is that, my friends, let us be loving, hopeful, and optimistic, and we will change the world.
We got this.
Great comments, everybody.
Yeah,
awesome.
we just Jonah. For Jonah to say he's thinking hard here, I have to say I think you're doing more than 95% of Ontarians, and we commend you for that, because it takes a lot to, like, I believe he started by saying he's a diehard conservative. It
That's
takes
right.
a lot to look from a different perspective.
Yeah. Well, I was a diehard liberal for years and years and years, and look at me now. I'm on the NDP team.
And we're happy to have you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, let's go back a little bit. Kathy, what do you think is at stake for SD and G voters? And I know you had questions. Or is that
there,
too broad?
no, again, there's a whole lot at stake, I think, for SD and G voters. And when again we look at sort of the Americanization of politics, when we look at, so we're going to go deep, Jeremy, here. We're going to get serious for a second.
Okay.
When we are, and again, I think this goes back to your core message, when we are being faced with sort of the politics of America that are based in division, based in hate, if we're going to call a spade, the rise of sort of neo-Nazi sentiment and and anti-LGBTQ2 plus sentiment, uh, again, in my career as a teacher, uh, has been a strong advocate of school GSAs and rainbow coalitions and participating with Diversity Cornwall. Bringing my own children to be part and supportive of Pride in Cornwall and around our area, wanting to be sort of a person who stands up for the marginalized, the disadvantaged. How do we combat that in Ontario politics? How in our area, when we have seen the diversification of, like if we look in Cornwall, of our population, where immigrants to the area bring sort of new perspectives and new life and culture. How do we protect that? How do we protect our most vulnerable in an environment where hate and division and oppression are becoming so easy? There's a big one. Throw it at you, Jeremy.
Well, that's okay, because I've thought long and hard about this one, because it is, it is a big part of where I draw an inspiration from. It is very, very difficult to try to reconcile American politics. We have a country that's just over there. We're a border nation. We're on the border of the nation here, and it didn't used to be so different. But when you look into the history, Eastern Ontario is steeped in history. When we have the Upper Canada Village, we have the signs showing the battles of the War of 1812. We have the Rideau Canal here. So we've got reminders of things that we've done along the way, because we didn't always see eye to eye with our American neighbors. This took effort and it took time to build this relationship. And it's a little jarring to see all of that hard work suddenly disappear and no longer be able to see eye to eye. It was someone in our last group chat session, or Ask Jeremy session, that was speaking to whether or not we would be able to create a process for being able to take in people who were gay refugees. So basically people, because of their lifestyle choice, who would need to seek refuge from persecution just south of the border. These are very jarring and different points of view that don't necessarily match with what I see as myself as a Canadian and Canadian values, which is why I call it American politics. We will have to lead by example to show them, because we can't control anything south of the border. Though we may try to project that sort of strength, we simply can only do what we can do for ourselves, which is why when we start to talk about what to do about tariffs, we talk about, well, interprovincial trade. These barriers being in place are probably, they're hurting us more than helping us, when we need to realize where our friends truly lie, and it's with each other. The provinces don't always see eye to eye. We always have different points of view, maybe even kind of call each other out from time to time. But now more than ever, that message of solidarity is going to be able to create an environment that, if we commit to Canadian values, shows the Americans the way back. This thing can't last forever. This deeply divided, hateful rhetoric is simply just going to blow up in someone else, in their own faces, as people simply say enough. You'll reach a point where it simply no longer works for you. You'll reach the end of the road where you reach the true conclusion that it was wrong to hate and it was wrong to divide. And in the interest of democracy, we need to get back on track. Hopefully, when they get there, they won't have done a catastrophic amount of damage to their neighbors, and we'll done the things that we need to do to make sure that we'll be there to build those relationships again and show them the way. I believe that Canada has always done that, and that's why we can wear the maple leaf on our bags when we travel abroad.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. Matteo, uh, because I just want to know from people why this election is important. So why is it important to you?
Uh,
Or
I I
presuming it
think
is. Yeah.
I mean we've talked about this at lengths already, but for me honestly it is housing. I want to be able to, even if I don't own a home one day, I want to be able to have a stable housing situation one day. I think Ford's government has put a lot of blame on the liberal federal government for the housing crisis, but housing is it's in provincial jurisdiction, and they've squandered over the past 7 years this situation, and I want to be able to not have to worry about where I'm living. So that would be my number one issue in voting, and I think it would be a lot of other young people's number one issue.
Phyllis, what about you?
I
You're
think I think to address what Mateo is saying, it's definitely provincial when it comes to housing. And I learned that the hard way by meeting with the mayor at City Hall last year. But I will say, the provinces get their money from the feds. I think, we have to look at the feds and they have to release more money to the different municipalities when it comes to housing. It starts at the top. The provinces only get so much money.
yeah, but
Yeah,
don't
I
forget the
I don't I don't want to sit here and act like the federal government has no say in it, but there's a lot that has come out showing that Ontario alone and what Doug Ford's government has done has kind of like made this housing crisis blow up all across Canada, even in the other provinces, because if you look at the patterns of migration in and out of Ontario because of housing shortages, it
Absolutely.
has caused this balloon effect everywhere in Canada.
Yep, yep, yep. You're right. You're right. I'm just saying that when it comes to the money part of it and having more
Mhm.
affordable housing and perhaps a homeless shelter and those kind of things, the provinces only get so much from the feds. So,
yeah,
yeah,
For
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
I
But
agree with that, but I could assure you, I think the NDP would do a lot better with that money than
I
the
agree
progressive
with that.
conservatives are doing
I
here.
agree with that statement. And to
I
answer your
hear
question, sorry, to answer your question, Louise, I think my biggest reason that I'm excited about this election is the fact that I'm new on the NDP platform and I'm learning all about what they stand for. I mean, I kind of knew a little bit over the years, but I know a lot more now. And it just warms my heart to know that they want to do so much good for everybody. Um, I will say though that being so involved in this election, I don't have a tough skin, and I really don't like people when they bash me because I'm an NDP supporter. It's almost like, why don't you just open your ears a little bit and listen to what they have to say? But for me, that's been a little bit of a tough
it's
pill
an
to
eye
swallow.
opener. Yes,
Yeah, an
yes.
eye opener of how mean and rude people can be, you know?
Mm.
it's tough in the web space. Now, are you finding that's people like in social media that are
Yep,
bringing that
yep,
kind of vitriol to you?
yep,
Because that's one of the interesting things when we're going door to door. So when we take the opportunity to do the old school and we do canvassing, it's just a different conversation.
absolutely.
Someone
I
sort of
agree.
wonders, like, I need to use Facebook Live for the ability to try to reach out because this is such a grassroots campaign where we give an apology to people. It's like, yes, we don't have signs to put out. We put our flyer out. We put everything in trying to use these medias to bring the messaging to you. But look at tonight's Facebook meeting. When everybody's come through, you folks have been great. The conversation can be different. And one wonders with synthetic media whether it's true, like where it comes from, because it's not part of the regular Canadian discourse. And it is a frustrating thing that I feel for you. I see
There's
your hand.
Yeah, there's a
Go right
comment in the
ahead.
chat. There's a comment in the
Oh, yeah.
chat. And I also want to tell Madame President that we've only got 3 minutes left. So this
I
comment,
know.
this comment in the chat from Miss May saying, referring to Phyllis's comment, the federal government did offer more funding for housing and Ford turned it down, exclamation mark.
May has nailed exactly where I was going to close with this because I hear Mateo's question and the feeling about whether or not the conservative government is going to help. This is a referendum. This is an election based on priorities. Yes, all levels of government. When we're talking major initiatives, we talk 60,000 homes. When you talk the types of numbers that Homes Ontario and Merit Style says they're going to deliver, everybody's at the table. All levels of government participate in making sure these things happen. So now it becomes a question of priorities and whether or not the Conservatives have their priorities straight. They know there's a problem. They're not dumb to it. It's just not a priority to a government that wants to focus on privatization, rates that are going to take over large multinational corporations that are going to buy all of the rental space within an area and then use that control to raise the prices and rent evict tenants. These are the things that when your focus is on privatization and corporate greed, you don't get the results that people need. The public interest and the public programs of the NDP will bring direct results to the people who need them.
Does anybody have any, I mean, we can go over a couple of minutes, it doesn't matter, but does anybody have any kind of last minute thoughts?
I want to ask Jeremy something
Go for it.
because if we're being super truthful here, SDSG is a mountain to climb to win as any party other than conservatives and progressive conservatives here provincially, who usually get 55 to 60% of the vote. And Jeremy, you have just come across to me as someone who will not accept defeat at any cost, so much to the point where it has really inspired me. And I just want to ask how you do it.
Simple math, Mateo. When we're looking at these types of elections and the things that have happened in the past few cycles that we've gone through, the last time we held an election, we got less than 42% of people to vote. Now, the one way to look at it would be that nobody cares. The truth is, people are waiting for inspiration. Though it's 55 to 60% of the people that voted, it's nowhere near the amount of people who are eligible to vote and have the right to have their say. I cannot accept that we are simply a conservative riding because less than half of people said so. Half of a half of a half. When you look at, I think it's 89,000 eligible voters, and this 55%, or I don't remember the exact number, I do apologize, but this percentage by which that the conservative incumbent won, or the not incumbent, the new elector won by, was less than 21,000. So see how that's not even really half? When we inspire people to vote and give their message, I believe that there are enough people out there that agree with me. And if they take that opportunity, feel inspired to do that, that the results will change. And that change will bring progress to Eastern Ontario. So all they have to do is feel inspired and given a reason why.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah, I have a comment here in the chat from Jacqueline, and she says, how can I communicate with people who don't share my opinions? Remember the relationship, regulate your emotions, be both assertive and humble, and seek to understand their perspective through paraphrasing and checking for understanding. Finally, find common ground and validate. Thank you, Jacqueline. That was wonderful.
Yeah, Jacqueline. I believe if that's Jacqueline, who I think it is Jacqueline.
Yeah,
Jacqueline,
it is.
thank you so much,
It's that Jacqueline.
Yeah, you're the best. And I really do appreciate, because that's one of those times where I've always been able to celebrate seeing eye to eye with somebody, and it's a wonderful feeling.
All right, so we're pretty much out of time. For everybody here, how would you describe this election? How does it feel to you? Yeah,
Nerve-wracking.
Yeah. Yeah, you got pins and needles. I've got a debate coming up tomorrow night, and that's going to be interesting, exciting, terrifying all at once. And I really, though I have enjoyed the ride, I have enjoyed the opportunity, and I want to be the MPP. This is going to be something that is going to stay with me for the rest of my life. And hopefully it means that it's a complete change in my life for me and my family.
Yeah. Kathy?
Also, I'll throw forward the word hopeful, because as I kind of led with in my question before, I was a little skeptical at first, but I mean, I've seen polls with hundreds of votes on Facebook. Nolan Quinn is nowhere near 60% of these respondents. The NDP has a fighting chance, and I am hopeful, a lot more hopeful than I had thought I would be maybe a couple months ago before the election was called.
Spread the word, Mateo. Spread the word. Tell all your friends at school, like Jackie said in the chat, you know, at your age group, people will listen to you. So thank you for even being here, and thank you for being a supporter.
It was a pleasure to have you.
Jeremy, this is an empowering election. Again, I have a 21-year-old off in Windsor, and he has had the joy of voting for an NDP who got elected in the Windsor riding in the last provincial election. And he says, Mom, based on everything you're reporting back, be empowered, feel hope, because now you have a chance to experience something I've experienced, an NDPer being elected in a riding, so you can bring about change. And again, you've got little voices from around the province going, it can be done, change can happen.
Well, for me, the word for me for this election, other than frantic, which, you know, when you're behind the scenes, it's frantic, but
Louise
it's all,
carries so much water for me. I can't even begin to describe to
Yeah.
you people how hard she has been working through all of this.
yeah, fun though, fun, but it's also passionate for me. It's passion. I can't stand the idea that I see so many people who could do better, okay, who are voting against their own interests. That always drives me absolutely insane. We have the option, we have the opportunity to do something positive for ourselves. You know, think it through, figure out what it is that you want in your life. What are your priorities? What's important to you? And then look to see who are the sorry, who can bring that to you. What party can bring that to you? Who's going to fight for you? Not because the world is increasingly run by ultra wealthy. This is what we're seeing in the US, and we're seeing it actually around the world. There's, a movement for the oligarchs of the world to take over. Well, I don't want them to take over for anybody. I want us to have decent, good lives. And we have the option. We just have to take it.
And we talk about being passionate for our community. I don't want to name any names here, but there are certain parties that people are conflicted about voting with or voting for the NDP that are not even running people from our community.
Do
Okay,
you
we
have
I
have
hear
one,
that,
we
but
have one last comment here in the
go
chat.
ahead. Thank
a
you, Phyllis.
question from John. He's asking, is the debate tomorrow going to be streamed? Does anybody
Now
know?
that is an excellent question because
know.
I know it's through your TV, and I noticed that much of it needs to be like where you log into Cogeco. It's
Yes,
a
no,
fair
it will be
question,
shown on Cogeco, but whether it's going to
but
be
will it
live
be streamed for
streamed?
everybody to see?
Yeah,
Now,
no.
I will
Okay, there you
confess,
go.
in
There
my
you go,
running
John.
through of the things I was doing today, that was on my list of things to do, and I did not check on it. John, I am so terribly sorry. I will need to, if you leave contact information in the chat, if you're comfortable with that, or find a way to reach out to our STSG
Yeah, just
NDP website
message us. Yeah.
and drop us an email there. I'll consider it a priority of making sure that you get the answer you need so that you can know how to tune in and to spread the word once you get it. Because once we have that information, I'm sorry I don't have it for you now, and I will get it.
When you have the information, Jeremy, I'll post it. We'll post
I
it for
appreciate that.
everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was on the list. Well, process. They're not doing enough to support.
Anyways, there's too much, eh? There's so much to do. I wish people
We're
had.
gonna have more of these. Bring your questions, bring your friends, bring your
Yes.
great like let's talk about how we're gonna keep doing things better. We've got a precious few days left, so we will have more, and we'll look forward to seeing you then, and I can't wait.
We have another live stream coming up Saturday afternoon. I believe it's at 2:30, something 2 or 2:30, with Kelsey Catherine Young Schmitz, who's gonna join us.
That'd be
And
great.
yeah, she's a lot of fun. She's a very, very intelligent person. She has run for the NDP federally in the past. She has lots to say. And I will make an event for that in a day or two. And I hope people join. And the other thing is, you can always write questions ahead of time. These live streams only show up once they're live, unfortunately, but you can go to the events page. Look for events locally and go to the events page and you can put in questions or just put in questions, in chat and just ask or you can even message us and we'll save the questions and we'll ask. So everybody, listen, I want to thank you all for coming tonight. I want to thank everybody who's participated, and everybody who's gonna watch this later on.
Yeah.
Okay?
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll stay
Thank
on, but
you.
I'm going to end the live stream.
Bye, everybody.
Get
Bye-bye.
out, vote.
Yep.
Take care.